Welcome back. Ukraine will mark the 4th anniversary of Russia's full-scale invasion on Tuesday, days after the latest round of U.S.-mediated negotiations concluded in Geneva with little progress towards ending the war. This weekend, Russia continued its aerial attacks of Ukraine with hundreds of drones and dozens of missiles, killing at least 4 people, according to Ukraine's president. Since the beginning of the war, the United Nations estimates more than 15,000 Ukrainian civilians have been killed, while more than 41,000 have been injured, though they say that is likely an underestimate. The UN also saying the war has forced nearly 6 million Ukrainians to flee their home country. Meanwhile, on the battlefield, it's estimated nearly 2 million soldiers on both sides, Ukraine and Russia, have been killed, wounded, or are missing. Joining me now is Olga Stefanishyna, Ukraine's ambassador to the United Nations. Madam Ambassador, thank you for joining me, and I wish it were under different circumstances, but thank you for being here.
Thank you for having attention to this matter.
Absolutely, and you were just in Kyiv, so you have seen the latest in terms of the situation on the ground with your own eyes. What is the latest there? What is the status of the war?
Well, we're not only approaching the 4th anniversary since the beginning of the full-scale invasion, we're approaching the end of winter. And what I can proudly say that despite the fact that this is the coldest winter in decade and the most atrocious winter from the point of view of Russian missile and drone attacks across the whole country, Ukraine survived this winter. This is against the forecast Russians were feeling. The American delegation was that Ukraine will not make it through the winter. Ukraine will not make it through the next 3 or 4 months. The situation will be worse. On the opposite, Ukraine stands. And this is the major message we would want to send on this 4th year since the beginning of war.
There's been so much focus on the talks that are happening. Do you think that real progress is being made? And can there be progress until Russia agrees to a ceasefire, which they refuse to agree to?
Well, the war is not just a diplomatic talks process for Ukraine. The war is something real for every Ukrainian. Every Ukrainian family faces the consequences of war, whether somebody's been in the military or somebody's house has been attacked and or the houses were freezing or they were not having access to water and supplies or people were fleeing out of their homes and cities. So this is so real for Ukraine, and nobody but the ordinary Ukrainian would want to wake up in a country we know the best, the country which is prosperous, free, and democratic. But at the same time, we see that these diplomatic efforts are still marked by a huge gap between what is really happening on the ground. And until this gap is getting smaller, it's too premature to speak about the progress. But through the leadership of President Trump, the process has been secured, and I know that the teams are working tirelessly day and night to bring it to result. But at this point, what we see more vividly than ever, that Russia uses the negotiations to prolong the war and to gain what they want by signing it on a paper instead of, fighting on a battlefield.
Let me get your reaction to something that President Trump told Reuters last month about peace talks. He said, quote, "I think he," meaning Russian President Vladimir Putin, "is ready to make a deal. I think Ukraine is less ready to make a deal." And then he was pressed on whether the U.S. negotiations had not yet resolved this conflict. Who was more responsible? The president said Zelensky. What do you make of that?
Well, these messages were very different, and they're different before and after different rounds of negotiations. And I think I understand very well the emotion of President Trump. He's the president of the United States who has made a personal commitment to end the war. And unfortunately, just tomorrow, when he will make his address to the nation, he's not in a position to say that he ended this war. And Ukrainians are the most active. We're the most vulnerable part in this trilateral talks. We are dying, and that's why we are always wanting something. We're always demanding something. something, but we are standing not only for the sake of the peace deal. We're standing for our lives, and that means that there are like so many more angles, but a part of the speaking about the Donbas area and everything related to that. So everybody have a lot of emotions, but I think this is us who are dying, and we appreciate the leadership of President Trump, and we are trying to do our best to spend as much time as we can in a frank discussion and a tough negotiations, but secure the real war over and the real peace established.
You raise the State of the Union address tomorrow. What do you want to hear from President Trump?
I think it's important that President Trump hears from us that every Ukrainian is dreaming only of one thing, that his commitment is brought to life. And be it Ukrainian members of the government, of the parliament, the president of Ukraine, or average Ukrainian who wakes up or goes to bed knowing that he may not wake up in the morning. Nobody in my country wishes more for President Trump to succeed in these efforts. And for me, it's really important that he hears that before tomorrow's address on the Union. We know very well that he has a personal stand and a personal commitment. We have invested every effort we can to provide necessary information, data, ideas. We're ready to contribute with anything to have him succeeding in this commitment.
And you talk about what you want to hear from him and the fact that you feel as though he is committed to getting a peace deal done. Do you think the United States is giving Ukraine the support it needs right now?
Well, of course, we need more because we are defending ourselves, and the cause we asking for support is very obvious. So this is not for political or geopolitical goals. This is not about the spheres of influence. This is not about big strategic things or deterrence or balances, checks and balances in a global politics. It's just for simple things, just to defend ourselves and to save our cities. And this is where we will not ever stop asking for. And we're really grateful that that now we see the increase almost by 60%, the increased commitment and contributions from Europe, but also U.S. Capabilities are vital to secure Ukrainian air defense. And these are the only available capabilities on the world which could really help us close the skies over Ukrainian cities. And again, the number of losses among civilians have increased by 40%, according to the UN reports, just over this year. And this could be easily fixed by depriving Russia from the ability to terrorize Ukrainian people and Ukrainian cities. And everybody know how to do this. This is a military solution. We are ready and capable of, paying for that. And I'm sure it is possible, and it's very humane.
All right, Ambassador Stefanishyna, thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate it. We hope the war comes to an end soon, as you are calling for. We appreciate it.
We thank you for watching, and remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.